Have a quorum, so could we bring the meeting to order, please? Item one is the discussion of public comment. It's allowed, the public is allowed to speak in public comment after first being recognized by the chair, except that any comments or complaints regarding individual identifiable officers are not allowed. Rather, any such comments or complaints may be provided to the board in writing, and the board will forward such comment or complaint to the appropriate person within the Lawrence Police Department. The board may establish reasonable limitations on the allowable length of public comment. As a general practice, the board will not discuss or debate these items or make any decisions on items presented during this time. We do have one guest today, and this is Keith Brown, who just happens to be the chair of the Olathe Citizens Police Advisory Council. So, welcome, Keith. Thanks for coming. The next item is review of the minutes from the last meeting, and I understand you, Doug Gibson, have some recommended modifications.
Did we get those updated?
In the packet there, the first set is what was online. The second set is your suggested changes.
Was that, I mean, did we delete that?
Yes,
You were
and
talking
it's,
about?
so it's in that second set there, but you might want to describe
Yeah, would you
from
like
there.
to describe? I was just gonna say, would you tell us?
All I did was, I didn't work on all of the minutes. I just worked on
Right.
the section, which was about my presentation.
Right,
Which is page four. Page four. Is this? Okay, this
yeah,
one.
you got.
The highlighted, right.
You got Dr. Gibson's highlighted
Uh-huh.
change. Everybody got that? So here's, we have the minutes that are online plus,
And this is the online one, right?
yes.
And there's
Yeah, the
another
one- and
version
then
here that
there's
has
the
my
other
edits on
version
it.
that has your comments on it. So we're talking about the section on page 4 where we were discussing Dr. Gibson's class project,
4 and 5.
4 and 5. So would you like to
I
discuss?
think it'd be easier if you all would just look. I mean, all I
Okay.
did was, I just elaborated, I added some of the detail to the minutes. I don't think that we've changed the meaning of anything. I think I just added detail. Does that sound right to you, Diane?
Mhm.
Give a thumbs up from Stephanie.
Has everybody read it? Is there a motion to amend the minutes?
I move.
Second. motion is to approve the minutes as amended by Dr. Gibson.
Yes, of the date.
Nobody else has any minutes on
Not to the purpose. Seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
them. Am I supposed to abstain?
Why?
This is your minute.
Because of my edits?
You clearly have a, you.
No.
It's fine.
All right, I vote yea.
Okay. Returning to the remainder of the minutes, administratively, Diane, could we start listing Dr. Gibson's degree after her name? Like Solshay as his PhD, could we start listing Dr. Gibson's?
Oh, right on the
PhD
front
after-
page, you mean?
After
Yes.
her name, please.
Tony?
Be happy to.
And then, are there any other comments or discussions on the minutes as written?
Mr. Chair, can I add a quick comment? That these meetings are being audio taped. We will have the full tape of all the meetings on the city's website. So that that can be a resource for you all if you ever have to refer back to details of the discussion that may not be captured in the minutes. I tend to be one where the minutes are fairly honed in on the action.
And that's publicly available.
It's publicly available it'll be on the website next to the agenda, then the minutes will be added in the audio.
Are there any other comments on the minutes?
I have maybe a question related to the last meeting. And maybe it's somewhere on the agenda and I don't know, but I read that there is going to be a study that's been, are we gonna talk about that? Or was that something that we needed, or that we talked about at the last meeting? I just don't recall it. I'm sorry.
I did mention it at the last meeting,
Okay.
and I might suggest that, that it might be an appropriate thing for this board to talk about if you'd like a presentation on what is going to be done with that study. That is being done through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council at the county, but the city is participating in the funding, as is several other cities in Douglas County. And that might be an appropriate thing to ask the county staff person with that board to make a report. If you all want to do that, that could be something
Okay,
you
and
request.
We could
Maybe
add
for
it to our
those that-
agenda for discussion.
Tonight?
Mhm.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay, with that, are there any other comments on the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes as amended are approved. Okay, when, the third item is that when we discuss the changes to our bylaws, we also discussed an impact those changes would have in requiring a change to the ordinance that the bylaws implement. And we effectively made two recommendations. And if you go to section 2504, D, which is basically on pages 3 and 4 of the ordinance, we had recommended a change to paragraph D. And that starts on the very last line of page 3 and then goes over to page 4, we had recommended that the sentence that says, "The board will review the evidence but will not reweigh it and will not make witness credibility determinations," we voted to recommend a change that said, "The board will review the evidence," period. The remainder of that sentence stricken and everything else there. The comments on the minutes are on page 2. At the very bottom of page 2 in the minutes, there was a motion made to recommend the third sentence be revised, and we approved that motion unanimously, which was to recommend a change in the wording of the ordinance. So we basically have an implementing letter that will go to the city council saying, here's the recommendations that we made, and we're forwarding these to you, but I thought we would go through and at least review those last two things to see if there's any further discussion necessary.
This is your memorandum.
This is the draft memorandum there that is available. It's in the packet. One page.
Mr. Chair, if I could, the one thing that we haven't transmitted that to the city commission yet because we wanted you all to vote on that communication. But also, as you all discussed the bylaws this evening, there is a portion of the change to the bylaws that you all voted to recommend at your last meeting, that upon our review of the bylaws and the language in the ordinance should further trigger a change or a recommendation on your part of language in the ordinance. And I can touch on that if you'd like, but there might be, before you approve that communication, you might want to talk about the bylaws because there's another item that you might want to add to that.
And that's what I was looking for. Which item in the bylaws?
So on
We're talking about
on the
8, section 2.
yes, it's page 5 there, 8, section 2. That was there was a desire to strike that sentence, that first sentence there. That language is directly language from the city ordinance. So our feeling was that in order to strike that should also be in sync with the ordinance. So that should be something I think that you all talk about, and if you are requesting a change to the ordinance, that would make it so that the bylaws would line up with that language appropriately. So kind of given the fact that you have both bylaws and changes to the ordinance in front of you this evening, what you might want to do is consider passing these, approving these bylaws, which would be subject to the commission's approval, and transmitting these without the change to Article 8, Section 2. And just transmitting in your request to consider the changes to the ordinance that the commission consider this type of change. And then if they approve that, then you can amend the bylaws. And I think that would be the right course of events. It'd be what I would recommend.
When I was reviewing this, I was trying to find exactly where we were potentially in conflict. So where is it in,
Maria, do you know where that is right off?
you noted that we're potentially in conflict, but what section aren't we really basically getting back to 2504D?
You're referring to the
Or
bylaws,
E.
right?
Yeah, well,
Or Second eight, or second two.
you know, we basically, in the bylaws, talked about Article 8, Section 2, and we approved striking the first sentence, and the second sentence says, we don't do our own investigation. We review the police investigation. Okay, so the, I tried to find where it was in the ordinance that were potentially in conflict.
Here.
What page?
12504
8.
8.
Okay,
Somewhere in the middle. It says board members do not conduct their own investigation in allegations of misconduct. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus.
and it goes further, what is that, the second third sentence? Board members shall receive complaints in
Mhm.
a confidential manner and shall not make inquiries.
So far,
But that's,
well, basically what we approved, or so that we could recommend, is verbatim to what's in the ordinance.
yeah.
There was a motion at your last meeting to strike the first sentence of Article 8, Section 2 of the bylaws. Our
Right.
concern is that that language is language that is just simply in the ordinance. And
Okay.
we think it'd be appropriate if the commission, that should be transmitted as a request to amend the ordinance if the board so desires. Or otherwise, it needs to stay in because it is part of the text of the ordinance.
Okay, we said board members shall not conduct their own investigation.
So the sentence before that, shall receive the complaint in confidential manner.
Oh, and shall not make.
So that has to be
Right,
struck.
right, okay, there it is. There's the offending spot.
Yes. That's fair. Period after confidential.
So again, my suggestion is that if you all want to recommend that the commission, in the transmittal of changes to the ordinance, strike this language, that should be a recommendation related to the ordinance. And what I would recommend then is that you consider the bylaws that does not have that sentence removed in your bylaws, so that the commission can decide what they want to do with the ordinance, and if they are willing to entertain striking this from the ordinance, then that way, that gives you the ability to come
Okay.
back.
So what
to-
you're really talking about is the chicken and an egg.
It is, but I think that's the right process.
Yeah.
And since you all are submitting changes to consider for the ordinance anyway, that this would be the appropriate thing to do, if that's what the board's intention was. We just wanted to bring it to your attention that we don't think it would be appropriate for this to be struck from the bylaws when it is in the ordinance.
Right, because our bylaws implement the ordinance.
Right, and it was kind of buried in here, and so but when we were talking about it between the last meeting and this one, we realized that it was actually language in the ordinance.
Can we not make a recommendation to the city commission to strike it from the ordinance?
Yes, you can decide to not do that, but then I don't think it's appropriate for it to be struck from the bylaws, because it is text of the ordinance.
That's,
I understand that, yeah.
I'm a little confused.
what I understand is, since our bylaws are supposed to implement the ordinance,
Or be a product
be a product of tell us how to.
to govern based on the ordinance.
I think
Yes.
there's a misunderstanding. Her question was, they asked to change the ordinance instead of the bylaws? And if they get the
Yes.
ordinance changed, then they can change the bylaws. Is that?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think there was a bit of a.
so
Oh.
it doesn't make any sense right now
To change the
to
bylaws, but it
bylaws
does make sense to change the ordinance.
ordinance.
Right.
Yes, so what I was suggesting is if the board does want to have this change considered, I would suggest to you that the appropriate way to do that is by a new motion today to add to your transmittal to the commission for the recommendations about the changes to the ordinance. But I would consider the bylaws without that change tonight, so that you can go ahead and pass on to them bylaws and then have them take up the ordinance issue. And if they pass the ordinance with this language, if they agree to strike this language from the ordinance, then you could revisit the bylaws.
Other discussions or questions, Tanya?
Yeah, I don't want to relive what I might be missing in my head from the last meeting. However, I understand the process, but what I'm thinking about is, what is the intent? I think this did come up. What was the intent of the city to put that in the ordinance? And then what's our intent to remove it, to request the removal of it? Is that a fair question to raise?
The minutes capture the fact that there was a lot of concern about the fact that we're not, that we should not be an investigative unit.
Right.
We forward things to the police public accountability board, and they make a determination, and then we review what they do. So I have no idea why the council put this in an ordinance, other than it might be some vestigial piece that was in some other, on the previous board or the like, I don't know. But
Well, I
it's
think-
not of the council's motivations to put it in are
Because it's
not germane at the moment, because we either recommend that they consider this in the ordinance or not. That's all we don't have to worry about
right.
prior history.
Sure, yeah. So I'm wondering, once again, was our conversation about that first sentence is understood through the second sentence?
I don't remember, but that's how I'm reading it right now.
And that's how
certain
I'm kind of
redundancies are
recalling
needed.
my arrival at that at the last meeting,
Mhm.
was that it was mildly redundant. Does that make sense?
I think I think that's what I recalled of the discussion
Yeah.
that you had. But again, we're just suggesting that because it is language that is specifically in the ordinance, that it shouldn't be struck here.
And I think my question then would be, if that, in terms of the ordinance, if that statement in the ordinance is different than that second sentence, which I think is also from the ordinance, what does that mean? What's the clarification between the difference? I mean, is an inquiry beyond the scope of information what one might assume is part of, like, I don't know. Someone trying to figure things out above and beyond what the responsibility is. you
Right.
know?
I think the first sentence was about you receiving a complaint from the complainant and not asking them questions. And then the second sentence about conducting your own investigation is not just talking to the complainant, but
So
also
they're two
other
separate
witnesses. Right.
Okay.
I think that I think the point is, right now, that we don't have the authority to change the bylaws unless the city council changes the ordinance. So
Well,
the point is, I think that a motion to table that part of the change to the bylaws until the city council rules on the recommendation would be an appropriate fix to this. We're not debating, in other words, let's stop a discussion of the bylaws at this point because it's sort of moot. We can table that for the future, and our recommendation can simply be, we can amend this letter, this memo to the city council and say we recommend this, and then if they, at which time they change it, then we can come back and revisit. Is there a motion?
I'd make a
Or
motion.
further
I'd make
discussion?
a motion that we, well, you can always discuss after the motion's made and seconded. I'd make a motion that we table this particular change in the bylaws until we have a chance to hear from the city commission about the change in the ordinance. And then, I don't know if I need a second motion or if I can continue this motion to say, to propose that we strike the appropriate section in the ordinance. So we would end that sentence, board members shall receive the complaint in a confidential manner, period. And then we would strike from and through the word properly processed. And that brings these two into line with each other. I mean, I don't actually see that there's a lot of big difference in leaving them or striking, but this is what we agreed to do last time, so that's what I would propose, is that we take the decision that we made last time and apply it to the ordinance, that we table the decision on the bylaws until we hear about the ordinance from the city commission.
Is there a second? Okay. As discussion, if you'll bear with me, we're talking about section 2504 A. Eight. I was just trying to find it, that had a parent around it. Okay.
It's the second half of the third sentence.
And so that's the third sentence. Okay, and okay, so the third sentence would read, board members shall receive the complaint in a confidential manner.
Period.
Period. With that out of the way, then there would be no reason why we could not subsequently change bylaws. So with that, pardon me?
I'm remembering more about the discussions, and it came from Bill really, that this was very, it's ambiguous, we didn't understand the meaning of the terms in this.
Right.
I mean, what kinds of things could we not ask, could we not talk about? We understand that we're just filling out a form, submitting it within 3 days. We have rules here, and that we're not gonna conduct an investigation at that point. So this was something that threw in language that seemed to raise more questions, and then it did give us effective guidance to know what the boundaries are and what we can do. That was, as I recall, that was the tenor of the discussion.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
As I read it now, it seems to suggest that we have the right to ensure that the complaint is properly processed.
Before we strike that.
Yes. If we,
That's a good point.
yes, before we strike that. That's what they're trying to give us.
A right or an obligation.
So
it's hard
I'm
to
not
say.
doing any investigation, but I'm ensuring that it is properly processed.
But we don't process it.
We don't process it, nor do we have a right to go over to the police and go in and say,
Say,
are you
"Did you
properly
process it?"
processing it or
Do
not?
we not have?
We forwarded, we
Forwarded.
delivered it, and
And we're done.
And
we're done. So that's why we talked about, we don't have any method.
Right, so if I could make a suggestion, generally, if, let's say, for example, we have a statute that is very kind of broad and it doesn't define certain terms, a lot of the times the courts will look at that statute and then interpret it about what they think that means, and that's how it's applied in the cases. So I think one option for you is to submit your recommended changes to the commission and then the ordinance is changed, or what you could do is leave it as is written in the ordinance, and then in your bylaws, you define what you think confidential manner is and how the process is gonna work. Because the bylaws are really kind of your handbook or your policy book on how you operate. And so it allows you to define and kind of think of the different scenarios that might come up and how you agree to handle them.
Well, I think from all our discussion and as reflected in the minutes, et cetera, I don't know, we shall not make specific inquiries of the complaint. Okay, got that. Beyond the scope of information necessary to ensure the complaint form is properly processed. We have no way of doing that. And the point of the matter is that we can't amend the bylaws to do something that we have any manner of doing it. So I recommend we continue with the present path, which has been proposed and seconded, and then in the discussion, we end up with recommending to City Council that third sentence read, board members shall receive the complaint in a confidential manner.
And it's just the change to that second sentence, is that correct?
Third sentence, that's it.
Third sentence, sorry.
That's it.
Okay.
Just the third sentence to read,
Okay.
just
And,
that piece.
and the other part of the motion was to table
Table
the
bylaws.
bylaw portion of it.
Until we hear back from the city commission about this change.
Okay, thanks, I wanted to make sure I got that.
Sure. Is there any additional discussion?
Call the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? I guess I forgot to call that. Do we have anyone who wishes to abstain? I hear, no. So, unanimous. Okay, which brings us back, I have written down that in the proposed changes to the ordinance, which I'll give to you, Stoddard. But then the question becomes, now, well, we voted to table that, so in page 3 of the minutes, which start with paragraph 3, made a motion, I'm just gonna note those minutes to say that this was tabled, so that would be a change to the minutes. No, it wouldn't be a change to the minutes. Minutes are good.
These minutes.
Thank you,
Yeah.
the minutes
So
are
you
still
look
good.
at- yeah.
But in the revised bylaws, which we haven't actually approved yet, we need to take that up. So as far as I believe, we've taken care of the potential conflict between the bylaws and the ordinance. Do I agree with that?
Did we
Okay.
really not approve the changes to the bylaws? I thought we did. I thought that was what our vote signified. Am I mistaken about that?
Yes, you all had asked us to prepare some additional language related to a certain section of the bylaws. That's why all the bylaws are back in front of you, because I thought it would be appropriate for you all to see everything and then
Yes.
approve the bylaws that then will be sent to the commission for their authorization.
Right, I'm the one who requested that,
Yeah.
so.
Right, so that's what's drafted there in that, I think it was Article 2, Section 5.
So if you So if you take the bylaws in front of you, the first recommended change is on page 1, Article 2, Section 5, which clarifies the terms of office from basically August to August instead of June to June. Is everybody satisfied with that it represents what we discussed in the minutes? Okay. The next change is Article 3, Section 3, which basically recognized that we sort of started off in the middle. So it just talks about, with the exception of the first year, the elections are going to be held first opportunity after September 1st of the year. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Then, Article 8, Section 2 is the one that we just tabled.
So there's a tackle under section 3.
And we haven't gotten to Section 3 yet. Section 2 is the one we just tabled, which I was going to make a note on, except that my pen is finished. May I borrow a writing? So, Section 2, we just tabled, pending commission response. As Dr. Gibson noted, in Section 3, there's a typo, which is added the extra F to the word when in the very beginning. Yes, ma'am. See that list on there?
Yes.
Okay. That, I believe, are the changes to the bylaws So, you know, we have an opportunity now to, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Article 2, Section 3, if you'll look in the minutes, I think they made a motion to delete the language about
Owner business.
Owning.
That comes from 12500.
right, because that could be someone who's out of town that owns a business here. Is that something that we can't change?
It is in the list of your, it's not anything that you can change in this bylaws yet, but it is in the list of the changes that you're asking them to do in the ordinance. So if they take up the ordinance change, then that piece could also be revisited by.
Right, so we're in the same, you're correct in that it's a good catch, but on the other hand, that change would be tabled for the same reason that we were tabling the other thing. So, well, it is that particular thing discussed in the letter to commission. It says the board believes that it's not sufficient for somebody to own a business but not be a resident of Lawrence to be on the board. Therefore, we unanimously approve the motion to recommend deleting the language from the thing. So we cannot vote or change that yet until city commission takes that. But that's a great catch.
Right, and again, as I pointed out at the last meeting, that language comes from the city's policy on advisory boards. So the commission's going to have to decide if they want to make an exception to that, because that language applies to all boards. But
For some reason.
So, on the bylaws, with the exception of tabling the change to Article 8, Section 2, and including the correction of the typographic error in Section 3, I make a motion to approve the bylaws as edited. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, so that's unanimous. And we've sort of put the cart before the horse again, but if you just would please take the draft memorandum, the one page that's in front of you, and let's take a look at it real quickly to see if there are any comments or corrections, edits. The obvious correction is the second paragraph of specific discussion were 3 sections of the ordinance, since we've added the other. So that would be
8 of 250.
section 12402504A8, section, add the remainder as written. So there's 3 sections.
Mr. Chair, I think probably also just
Put a colon in front of that.
recognizing that there was discussion at this meeting in addition to the December 5th meeting, then in that first paragraph.
Yeah.
Yes. So at our meetings on December 5th, 2018, and January 24th, 2019. Thank you. It is the 24th. Okay. Any other comments or recommendations? So we'll make the date on the top January the 24th. Any other additions? Do I have a, I guess, a motion to deliver this to you?
Will you all want to add a paragraph about the reasoning behind 2504AB, the changes that you're recommending this evening?
What should the rationale be?
Actually, all we have to do,
Copy
yes.
from the minutes.
I'll write that if you don't mind, which is,
Copy from the minutes.
it could be copied from the minutes, but as explained in the minutes, but the other piece of that is that I would add just the following. The board did not feel that it had the authority to ensure that the complaint form is properly processed. Okay.
2504A8.
Okay, we're gonna review that right this second. Okay, we ended up having a discussion about why we couldn't adopt section 8, paragraph 2 from our draft changes to the bylaws. And the reason for that is that we saw a conflict and a confusion with section 12504A8. So now in the draft memorandum to the city, we're citing 3 sections of the ordinance. We're citing the ones that are in the draft memo, which is 2504D and 2506A. But in addition, we're citing 2504A8, where we recommend the third sentence be modified to read.
The third sentence in the ordinance?
Yes, the third sentence in the ordinance to read, board members shall receive the complaint in a confidential manner, period, remainder of sentence deleted. The board did not feel it had the authority to ensure that the complaint form was properly processed. Did that answer?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody see where we are?
Mhm.
I propose, I propose that the draft memorandum be approved with the additions provided, which is we added on the first paragraph at our meetings of December 5th, 2018 and January 24th, 2019, the Community Police Review Board discussed the ordinance creating the board. We added the discussion that I just went on 2504A to the discussion of the other 2, so a specific discussion were 3 sections of the ordinance, 2504A8, 2504D, and 2506A, obviously with a 1 in front of it. So my motion is to approve the amended memorandum and forward this to the City Commission for consideration.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're unanimous.
Would you like me to just describe what happens then with, when you forward information back to the commission, both these bylaws and this? So what I will do is make sure that this gets communicated to the city commission via their agenda. So they'll have an agenda item where they receive these recommendations, and then from there, they can provide direction to staff for either any discussion that they would like on that, or if they would prepare any changes to the ordinance. And the same with the bylaws would be presented as you approve them this evening, for them just to approve those changes.
Oh, right. With the, but not considering the parts we tabled.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yay. Isn't it good to get something done?
Can I make just one quick comment?
Sure.
I understand in the ordinance, I think the intent, which I'm sure it is, to safeguard the process by talking about, no inquiries or no investigations, things like that. Maybe it just needs to be cleaner in the ordinance. And so with regard to safeguarding the integrity of of what we're doing, Does that need to be reflected in the bylaws then? I see those as examples of safeguards to make sure that the integrity of what we're doing is there, okay? Does that language need to be in the bylaws or not? And then I guess I want to make sure that intent and the spirit of the memo certainly is to make it clean. We understand our roles about not making inquiry. We understand our roles in terms of not investigating. We're real clear on that. So that's, I think, part of our intent of making it real clear and succinct. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense because basically, whenever the city council makes a change to the ordinance, they're going to force us to take a look at the bylaws and say, okay, they've changed the ordinance. Now, it's our bylaws. We need to review our bylaws to see that we're compatible with the ordinance. So that would be the next logical step, I think.
Just a statement on that end.
Right. The next item on the agenda is our very patient police force has waited through our administrivia. Could you please, we have our report in front of us.
I'm gonna stand up and present too, if that's okay.
Please.
Unless
Please.
it's uncomfortable, I can sit back down. Well, hi, everybody. I am Sergeant Amy Rhodes. I am currently the Public Affairs Officer for the Lawrence Police Department. I have been on the police department for 17 years, actually went through the academy with Sergeant Ernst. I've been a supervisor for the last 5 years and assigned to the Public Affairs Unit for the last 3 years. Currently, as the Public Affairs Officer, I oversee our 2 officers in our Public Affairs Unit. We are currently in the process of hiring a civilian to replace one of the officers in the unit who will then be redirected back to patrol for manpower resources. I also oversee our school resource officers. And currently we have 2 officers at Lawrence High School, Officer Glenn Fogarty and Officer James Miller. And then we have 2 officers at Free State High School, Officer Shelby Frazier and Officer Ann Robinson. So I kind of have 2 separate roles, but they often at times collide together with the community engagement stuff and the things that we do in the community. Sergeant Ernst and Diane had asked me to come and kind of talk to you guys a little bit about the engagement efforts that we do, the outreach, and some of the things that maybe you might not know that the police department engages in. So kind of to give a background, when I came into the Public Affairs Unit 3 years ago, Sergeant McKinley, now Captain McKinley, was the PIO for the police department. And the way that he handled all the media, our social media accounts, he helped plan events, and then he oversaw our 2 officers, which then were neighborhood resource officers. When I came into the position, I realized that I'm not going to be able to fill Captain McKinley's shoes because he did it very, very well, and I had to kind of change my style and the shoe size a little bit because I'm a little bit different than he is. And so what we've done over the years, in the last 3 years, is we've made it more of a unit, a public affairs unit, where we have brought in the 2 officers and given them an opportunity to not only help tell our message through media, but also help assist with our social media accounts, and we really kind of work together to get our message out to the public and to also inform the public of what's going on in the police department.
May I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
My apologies. I had meant to say this in introducing to you, which is if you go back to our famous ordinance, okay, one of the reasons why we requested this, and of course it's appropriate, is that in the ordinance, the purpose of the board is to assist, one of the purposes of the board is to assist the city and the police department in policy development, education, community outreach, and communications related to racial or other bias-based policing issues. So basically, here is an opportunity to receive the police department's report, and then at subsequent, at a subsequent meeting, for example, we can actually table discussion of this and go through and see if, after your presentation and everything, we might have some recommendations in addition. So please give a close listen, Sergeant Rhodes.
Okay. So what we've done is I've really tried to bring the officers into the unit and being a part of getting our message out to the public and informing the public about the things that we do. In the past, you know, and when I first came on, the police department's way of getting information out to the public was quite different. I feel like when I first came on, it was more safeguarded. We weren't very transparent. I think everybody can recognize that it's changed in the last couple decades, and it's really important to us now to get information out to the public in a timely manner, and also hear what the public has to say. And so I think we've in the last few years have really moved toward in that direction of being more transparent and providing more information to the public. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about in our unit, and what we try to do is tell our story. We try to report out before the media to let the citizens know kind of know the information, so it's coming from us. Sometimes in media, it can be presented in a different light. And so we've tried to use social media as one of our platforms to kind of put out information so it comes directly from us. So if I write a press release about, you know, an officer who got impaled by an expandable baton, that information I put out on our social media pages, and I put it out to the public so that they can actually read what we provide to the media. And so they have an idea of exactly what we told them, and then maybe when they read the story in the paper or see it on the news, they have a little bit more information that might not have been reported. And so the document that I provided you tonight is, it's not an annual document that we do. When I was asked to speak to you guys tonight, I just started piecing this together to kind of see where we're at. One of the things I did is I reached out to all the members of the department, and asked them to provide me the presentations that they might do that I'm not aware of, or some things that they do volunteer-wise, or you know, events that they may have been a part of that my unit did not plan. In the public affairs unit, we plan all of our Coffee with the Cop events, our community safety fair. We go out and give presentations, safety presentations. We talk to the Boy Scouts. We give tours of the facilities. We go to churches and show our police cars and let the kids get in and run the sirens. So we do all those kinds of things in my unit. So you guys understand the document. The first piece is what my unit has done, and I'll walk through it and kind of explain everything. And then in the middle of the document, we'll talk more about the things that everybody in our department participates in, and then at the end we'll talk about like specific types of presentations that we go out and give, and all those good things. So this isn't really relevant, but last year we wrote 22 press releases to push out to the community. The guys in my unit attend our monthly LEAP meetings, which I don't know what that stands for, but it's the LEAP Awards. It basically recognizes the city employees, all the city employees of Lawrence, and from each department in the city has representation on the board, and we recognize years of service and the good deeds that the employees of the city of Lawrence do on an annual basis. We attend Douglas County Safe Kid meetings. I am a part, and I've brought my 2 officers in on the Douglas County PIO group, Public Information Officer group. That group consists of Douglas County Sheriff's Office, the Fire Department, the Health Department, LMH, Red Cross, KU, and I'm sure I'm missing some people, but we get together monthly and we talk about how we can better provide information to the public, and how we can learn from each other's mistakes, because we've noticed we all make mistakes, and we want to improve from that. We also, my unit has participated about 2 times a year in the emergency management disaster preparedness scenarios. So those are like tabletop scenarios where, you know, we might represent a tornado comes in, and all the different entities in town, we meet and we talk about how we would respond, what we would do, how we could make sure the public's safe, and that kind of stuff. We do that twice a year. We are also responsible for our recruitment website that we implemented in the past 3 years to reach out and inform the people that want to come and be police officers with us, kind of a little bit about that process and how they can apply for that. The next section there is just the presentations that either my public affairs officers or my SROs have presented. All of my SROs are ALICE trained, and they actually teach the active shooter training. They are instructors for that. The school district paid to have them be instructors, and so they assist the school district. And I'm currently are in the process of training every school in Lawrence, the active shooter response, if that were to occur in the school district.
Sergeant?
Yes, ma'am.
What does SRO stand for?
School resource officer, sorry. We give presentations monthly on internet and social media safety, alcohol safety, alcohol awareness, personal safety, scam presentations. We give presentation at the University of Kansas Journalism School. I work closely with the media students, the journalism students. We go up there and tell them kind of what they can expect if they were to contact me, if something happens in the community, or if they wanted to reach out to Chief Burns and interview Chief Burns. We kind of go up there and show them that process, and we talk about Kansas open record laws and that type of stuff. We've also presented in Katie's Law School and Katie's International Family Orientation. We participate in Neighborhood Watch. We've given presentations to actually the Johnson County Public Information Officer Group. We've talked about our social media efforts to Leadership Lawrence here in town. And then this year we also presented at the CANSPRA, which is the Kansas Regional School District. They all come together, the administration comes together, and they talk about how to make the school better. So we presented a social media at that this year. So the next section is our Facebook and Twitter. It's not a whole, it is relevant to community outreach because it's a different way of connecting with the community. It's something that it's been around for a while now, like 10 or 11 years, but we didn't really utilize it the way it could have been. So in the past few years, I don't know if any of you are on social media, you'll notice our Twitter page is more humorous.
Everyone has Twitter, all public entities have Twitter envy, right?
It's the most commonly asked question, at least of me. It's not like, oh, it's who runs your Twitter account? That's the most common question when they find out you're a Lawrence cop. And it doesn't matter where you're at.
Right.
So when we came in, we realized we were lacking in reaching out and having conversations with people. And so we wanted to use social media as a way to, initially started as a way to connect to the students and to the younger generation. And so our Twitter, we just started off with this one tweet. When we came in, we had, I think, 600 followers, and now we're at 120,000 followers. Just by the humorous tweets, but we also put information out there. If you follow it, you'll see that it's majority humorous, but when we need to get information out, if there's a standoff, or if we need somebody to stay out of the area, or if an officer's injured, or if we're looking for somebody, that's the quickest way for us to get information out to the public. Just one click of the button, and that spreads very fast. And so that is the intent behind that. I would say it's very successful, and it has, like Sergeant Hunt said, I will go through Starbucks and get a coffee, and they're like, your Twitter is awesome. And it's like, oh, that's great. Nobody would ever engage me before in uniform. You see a cop in uniform, and it's scary sometimes, and you don't want to, for whatever reason, you don't want to engage. I would say a majority of our officers experience that now because of the Twitter. So it's been a positive thing. There's been some cringeworthy moments, but overall it's been pretty good. So Twitter, in 2018, we gained 42,000 followers. We hosted the tweet-alongs, where one of our officers will ride with another officer and talk about what it's like to be a patrol officer, what it's like in a night shift officer, and how busy they are, and the different types of calls that we go on. And I've found that people they want to know, what do you do? What do you do? Do you sit there, and write tickets all day? You sit there and eat donuts all day, or whatever they think it is. But that is why we do that, to kind of give the public, who might not have an opportunity to come and do a ride-along or really see what it is that we do. They can see it through the eyes of our tweet-alongs. The other stuff doesn't matter. And then Facebook, Facebook is more informative for us. It's less humor, more professional, really wanting to get event information out there or, things that maybe our officers might have done good. They've like saved a dog or, helped some kids out playing basketball with kids or that kind of thing. We use Facebook to really engage that way.
Briefly to add on Facebook, just kind of back to the topic at hand too, is sometimes complaints come in on Facebook, or we'll make inquiries based on somebody making a statement of the activities of officers. So it's also another way for people to, while they view it as an informal way of communication, we treat it formally.
How do we see your Facebook page? How's it listed on Facebook?
It is Lawrence Police Department.
Do you use a lot of images or?
We do a lot, yes. Actually, we're going to be using more. It all depends on the officer that comes in and the skill set they bring. And I'm really excited about our new officer that just came into the unit. He is very good at graphic design and he's really good with Adobe. And so we have some really cool things that are going to happen this year with our Facebook. But social media, so I talked about telling our story and like letting people have like a bird's eye view of what the police department is, and that's what we use social media for. And it's changed the way that we interact with the community. The next section is just the things my unit also teaches in the academy. We have a recruit academy that we put on every year. It's 25 weeks, 4 weeks long. And so everybody in my unit, we all actively teach something in the academy. We are also responsible for security for the city commission meetings. We do those every other week. Last year we gave 9 tours to our facilities, whether it was the law enforcement center or investigations training center, to different types of groups. We attend the fake ID loans meetings. That was an initiative that we did this past summer to kind of crack down on underage drinking. We also are responsible for the background investigations of new police officers and any new civilian staff that comes onto the department. We participate heavily in the Final Four preparations with the meetings that go behind it, figuring out what our messaging is, how we're going to keep people safe, what do we want the public to know. We work closely with the University of Kansas and the command staff that help piece that together. This past year, we did a Salute the Badge story where the news station came and interviewed one of our officers. This particular officer had spent some time over in Kosovo. He took a leave of absence to go over there. And so they kind of talked about all the good things that he did over there, and then also all the good things that he's done since he's like a 30-year police officer here, and all the good things that he's done here. Huh?
I know she was serious.
We've given security surveys where we go into the banks and we tell them, here's some things that you consider to make yourself more safe, to prevent yourself from being a victim of a crime. Cub Skate Day Camp, Cole's Exploited Children event. We occasionally bring the gruff out, and we are responsible for that. Really proud of this. Last year, Chief Burns is really wanting to be more involved in the community and have more of a presence. So last year, we hosted our first annual community safety fair. It got interrupted at the end, but overall the day was a great day, and it was a really good opportunity to bring some businesses in, city staff in, and really engage and have conversation with the community. The sheriff's office participated, the fire department participated, and we actually, what we did that day, we made it a charity event where we asked the public to bring school supplies in and cram the cruiser. And so we had a fire SUV, a Douglas County SUV, one of our SUVs in KU, and we had the public put their school supplies into their favorite cruiser. We won, police department won, if you were curious. And we were able to donate that to the Lawrence School Foundation, which was able to help. There were thousands of items that were donated, so we were able to help the school district with that. We host police camp every year. Last year, I spoke at the Kansas City County Management Conference that was hosted here in Lawrence County with city officials from around the state. We instruct down at the Law Enforcement Leadership Academy Command School and telling our story, the social media efforts that we've done. We attended the Haskell Safety Fair, the LMH Safety Fair, High B Safety Fair, and we also assist the ABC with alcohol compliance education training every year with downtown bars. What's that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
About these safety fairs, but specifically your first annual community safety fair.
Mhm.
Did you track the demographics of the people that attended the fair, not just you, and groups that participated as, I guess, leaders or demonstrators or something, but like public, you said it's for the community. Did you track the demographics of the community members that came?
We did not track the demographics, but for it being a first time event, I mean, there was a lot of families there was a lot of interactions. We had bounce houses and food trucks, and but we didn't track the data, no.
What kind of outreach did you do to attract different groups to the fair?
So we posted it on all the businesses that helped the PIO group. We were the planners of the event, and so all of us messaged the same on our social medias. We put flyers up throughout the city. We didn't specifically reach out to, it was kind of a word of mouth thing for being the first event. I'm definitely up for suggestions for this year. I'm getting ready to go into the planning stages. So if the board has some suggestions or how we can better do that, please let me know, and we'd be more than willing to listen to those.
It's a great opportunity.
It will be an annual event. Yep. We did something that it was a success in our eyes, and we felt that the engagement was very positive and informative, and we'd like to continue to do that. Nuisance house meetings, Hawks Fit, we attended the Haskell commencements, actually had one of our sergeants speak at the commencement last year as an honorary guest. We participate in project graduation with the high schools. I've already talked about the alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate, ALICE training for the school district. My department, we have video and photography, so we are responsible for photographing events, retirements, swearing-in ceremonies, the recruit academy, and so we have a lot of that we happen. We also help with SRO parades, homecoming, the negotiations with the city, that's on there just because my guys are on the LPOA. And then we also attend the neighborhood association meetings, and the ones that are listed here, we used to attend those monthly, and it kind of, the officer would come in and we found that, a lot of times they didn't need to be there. And so now if they request us, we will come to the meeting, give a presentation on whatever topic they like, but these are the ones that we attended in 2018. A trunk or treat, we attend those every year.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Can any group request an officer to come to a meeting?
Absolutely. So
So it doesn't have to be a neighborhood group?
It doesn't have to
Social
be,
media.
no. We have lots of groups that will reach out and ask us to come give a presentation on a certain topic. And as long as we have people available to do that, generally if they give us 3 weeks notice, we can schedule it and come out and do that. And we are more than happy to do that. Our department hosted a women's public safety network luncheon this year. It's basically a group of females from all ranks in the Metro region, Topeka. We get together monthly in Florence, and Douglas County Sheriff's Office co-hosted that. It was a great event. We participated in Central States Law Enforcement Executive
Development
Seminar. CS leads every year. That's hosted by the FBI. It's kind of a segue into kind of the National Academy, which is a big leadership thing through the FBI. Last year we were, one of us was a judge for the Boys and Girls Club Lawrence Youth of the Year. The next section you'll see they're bolded in italics. These are things that my unit participates in, but a lot of people get participate in. So our Bigs in Blue is partnered with the Boys and
Big Brother, Big Sister.
Big Brother, Big Sister. Thank you very much. And so Bigs in Blue, our officers once a month. Is it once a month or once a week? I think it's once a month.
Yeah, it kind of
Well,
depends
they
too.
are assigned a little in usually the elementary and middle schools, and they will go have lunch with their littles in the schools. Currently, we have about 13 or 14 officers that participate in that program. And they will either, if they're working on duty, they will go, but they will also go on their own time and go have lunch with their little. And that really is about building relationships with the kids and, you know, being a positive role model and mentor for them. Blue Santa was created by one of our officers who is now a sergeant several years ago, and we help communities, families in the community around Christmas time. We've partnered with Toys for Tots, and basically we have a toy store. I'm sure you've heard of it, but there's a toy store where donations come in. Officers will come in and help wrap presents. They'll organize it. We'll deliver the presents to the families, and the officers and their families will go deliver the presents and the turkey and all the things to the families. And I think last year we helped over 600 kids in the community with Susanna. Take Our Youth Shopping event is something that we do annually. We partner with the Ballard Center, and we have breakfast at McDonald's with these kids from the Ballard Center, and then we take them shopping over at Walmart. It's an awesome event. It's my favorite time of the year with these kiddos. It just makes their day, and it's a very good opportunity just to kind of give back to them. One of the things Chief Burns, we've done new since Chief Burns is Coffee with Cop. It's an opportunity to get with the community and have conversations. We had one today at McLean's, and it was a great turnout. There were so many people there. It was fantastic. But we did 6 of those last year, and we have several planned for this year as well. Our officers participate in Festival of Tree deliveries. And then the Void Deny Defend community training is an active shooter training that our department puts on for community businesses. In the last year and a half, they've given over 25 presentations to businesses in the community on you know, how to respond should an active shooter come into their business. So then the next section of this is just things that other outside of my unit that people participate in the department. I will say that not everybody responded to me to get this list together, so this is just kind of a, I would say 50% view of people that responded to me of things that we participate. So National Bike to School Day, Battle of the Badges with the American Heart Association. Every month we have a couple officers that go out to LMH and will make sure car seats are installed properly in new mothers' vehicles. Youth Trust Auction, Just Food, where we go around and, I shouldn't say we, I can't sing, but some of our officers go Christmas Carol to the retirement communities. We've attended the Career Day at Southwest Junior High School and Langston Hughes Elementary. We give Lawrence anti-human trafficking presentations in the community, also to the city and some businesses in town as well. Talked about the digital internet safety presentation. We've done those in all of the middle schools in Lawrence. We have command school instructor. We give Boy Scouts crime scene presentations, career center presentations, family science night at Langston Hughes, stepping stones, our canine handlers. So we have our dogs, Cheeseburger and Deuce. They come out. Those guys are really great. The community loves the dogs. But we've gone out and given presentations at some of the elementary schools, Haskell, and also police camp. CIT de-escalation, not only is our department working on getting everybody trained, we also give those presentations out in the community as well.
What's CIT?
It is,
Crisis Intervention Team.
thank you, Crisis Intervention Team training, mental health training. We provide crucial conversations training to city staff. We go out every year and meet with Willow Domestic Violence and talk to them about the things that have been going on in the community, how to keep them more safe, and any changes and how we can better work with each other for the survivors of domestic violence. Drug presentation at Haskell, College Fair at Haskell, Live On Bike Fair. Our mental health team presented at the KU Sociology Department this past year, the media class, school journalism, religion. We teach active listening, device conference, and then some some of our detectives actually presented at CS Leads this year. The next section is the department volunteerism. I thought it was important to put here so you see kind of what some of our guys and gals do on their own time, things that are important to them. This isn't something that the police department makes them do or tells them to go do. This is things that they do on their own time. So the Safe Winter Walkways, Blue Santa, the Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Big Boys Special Olympics. The list, we have a lot of things that we do with the Special Olympics. It's all listed there. We have good leaders, pack leaders. We have board members of Habitat for Humanity, board members of United Way, Outside for a Better Inside. We have officers that help out with team football. We have officers that are foster parents, the Polar Plunge. We have coaches on youth softball, baseball, soccer. One of our officers is assistant soccer coach at high school. We have wrestling coaches, youth football, and then we have officers that have developed security teams in their churches, just as a way to get back to them. And then the next section is just more boards and committees, specifically that our officers sit on in the community. I won't read through all those, but the one thing that's not on here that we are excited to bring back, so years ago we did, I'm sorry, did you have a question? Oh.
I did, but I didn't raise my hand. So
Oh.
how did you know that?
I can feel you.
I was gonna wait for you to finish. CS Leads, what's that?
Central States Law Enforcement Leadership Development Seminar. It's kind of, it's something that it's regional agencies will come here and we partner with the FBI and they put on leadership training for the people that attend that. Yes, ma'am. The one thing that's not on here that will be new for this year, we're going to continue to do all this outreach. But the one thing that I'm excited for us to get back to, many years ago we had a Citizens Academy. And in the last few years we've had several retirements and we've lost people. And so we had to kind of manage what we did and what we didn't do just because we didn't have the resources. And so that went away for a little bit. But Chief Burns wants to bring that back, and so we're working on condensing that down this year. It'll be an 8-hour training day of kind of a bird's eye view of law enforcement. We would like to extend an opportunity to you all to attend if you would like. But
Is it a Citizens Academy?
It's a Citizens Academy, and so it's still in the process of being developed of what exactly we'll do in those 8 hours. But it's an opportunity for community members really to come in and talk with us and maybe understand a little bit what we do about our dog program, about how we run an investigation, about IA, and it just kind of, we might throw them through, some scenario stuff and let them kind of get hands-on feeling of what we do in law enforcement. So that's pretty much it. I know I've rambled. Yes, sir.
So on the Facebook and Twitter, it's very easy to track the impact.
Yes.
On the other, you guys do a lot of stuff. Do you have a fee for the impact?
We don't track the impact. We don't collect that data. Like I said earlier, if organization or community member reaches out and request something, we try to accommodate that if we're able to, but we don't track that. But we're definitely open to suggestions if you have someone how we could do a better job of doing that.
And something to parlay into that too is, and maybe to your question is, it's very tough to track the impact because some of this, and I've seen this where we have officers that are coaches for young kids. And then now this officer, and I've been with these officers, and you show up at a high school football game, and all these high school kids going, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. So there's an element of many of these community engagements is sort of normalizing the police. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to say, oh, we've impacted X amount of kids, or X amount of this group or that group is very tough. There's almost like kind of this intangible thing of actually going out in the community and normalizing, because you don't really know what the impact is sometimes, or you don't even think of it, even where if you're out, coaching T-ball, and then they're like, and people will then ultimately reach out to the officer like, hey, I know you because you've coached my son's T-ball. Can I ask you some questions, or can I talk to you about this thing that happened to me, police related? So it's tough to completely measure the impact of our outreach in the community.
It's,
I need to, go ahead.
I was going to say, what he's referring to, we call it humanizing the badge.
Yeah.
And like trying to make those connections, and I can tell you, one of the most rewarding things as a police officer is if I've talked to a young individual, or I've worked, I used to work crimes against children, and, getting on their level and treating them, letting them know they're so important, and having them grow up and come up to me, Sergeant Rhodes, do you remember me? You saved my life. That's why it's important. We don't want to perceive ourselves as robots, or that, we're all, big and bad and full of authority, because that's not what it's about. We're human beings. And the more that we can get out in the community and show that, the better our relationship is with the people that we interact with, the easier it is to engage on calls. The easier it is to, if we are responding to a call and somebody recognizes us, and maybe they're part of the problem, but they recognize us and we've built that relationship, okay, we can calm down and we can talk about what's happening here. And so those are why we do some of those things.
I think the first thing I want to say is thank you for putting all this together.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't think the average person has any idea of all this outreach. If I'm average, then I had no idea. The second piece of it is, and this relates to what Sergeant Ernst just said. This is a great general report, but if then you come back down now to the specifics as the Community Police Review Board is looking at it, and looking at it from the standpoint of recommendations, or even reviewing a little bit, racial and bias-based policing, and what suggestions or contributions we might make toward that, then there's a number of questions, and these are things that I'm not sure, but it's much broader than we could do this evening. But my general question came up, and Sergeant Ernst sort of replied to that. How does the police department gauge whether this engagement and all these things you're talking about is actually effective? What percentage, for example, in all of this engagement, when you talk about the engagement of the police in their business side of traffic stops and event investigations and all of that kind of stuff, is there an indication that there is more or less normalization with the very groups that we're talking about when we are concerned with bias-based policing, or not having bias-based policing? When you talk about all the outreach to the various groups, or having officers there, Dr. Gupta's question was really good, in the sense of, can anybody request a police presentation? How many, I'm just going to use the word minority, how many requests have you had, for example, from black churches, LGBTQ community? I'm sorry.
QI.
Okay.
It goes on and on.
I'm the first to admit that I don't know the right terms for many of these things, because I'm not part of those communities and how they modify and grow and things. But when we're talking about bias-based policing, we're talking pretty much about how the police interacts. And so the question then becomes, okay, how many of these groups that we're concerned about when we talk about bias-based policing, how many of these groups were your presentations directed to? How many of these groups were, as you said, first time, great. But but in the public safety day, how many of these groups were specifically invited? Minority churches or the like. Those are questions I don't know that the police report or in the standard, you know, is there some report at the end of the year or annual report where the police department actually addresses the effectiveness of trying to normalize to all communities in Lawrence? It's long-winded,
Sure.
but you see my,
I
I'm trying to focus now down to, we've got a really, obviously, an outstanding outreach where people actually, or the community, many people in the community are seeing police as people, which is a good thing, okay? But then the next question is, how many in the disadvantaged communities, is that okay with everybody? Minorities, whatever one you want to use.
Marginalized.
Marginalized, okay?
Yeah.
How many, you know, how many people in these marginalized communities see a police officer as a person? It's a hard question.
It is a tough question, but it's also a tough question to answer. But also, I would argue for some of you folks, is the ability, there's holes in this presentation. We know that. We don't know what we don't know. It's ultimately saying, hey, have you thought about this sort of outreach? Have you thought about going to this community presentation? Hey, have you thought about sending flyers to these? I mean, because we don't know what we don't know. And I would still even go back to the original deal of the question of the impact or where our outreach gets. Ultimately, we can say this is the title of the groups we've reached out to, but we can't ultimately say what the impact is. It's kind of, it's tough to quantify, would be my opinion.
So, if I may second, I just
Oh,
want to
we're,
second
this is,
what
please.
Tony has said is that first and foremost, Amy, I know you put a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, all of us are very thankful for that, so we don't want to downgrade that at all. But this is a great starting point. Now we kind of have an idea, so we can work from there and work together on how do we, because you do so many good things, and knowing and being part of a.
That's why I did try to answer your question last time. I was like, we're gonna have to get somebody in here who has a longer list, because I would not be able to rattle this off.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. But there are some, I think there are things that pop in probably all of our heads about how we can, so we'll just take some time to kind of come back and, but lots of good stuff. But some groups, marginalized groups need invitation. Some of them don't feel comfortable to come to even say that first annual, you know, in an open, you know, so sometimes it needs that initial.
Sure.
So.
I appreciate that, and I would welcome any, you know, proposed ideas or any conversation the board would like to have. That's my job in the police department right now is to do that. And, you know, we try to reach everybody in the community, and obviously we can do a better job at that. And that's one thing, you know, as a police, we want to be better. We want to continue to improve and make improvements and make sure that we are reaching the different minorities in town and the different demographics. That is important to us.
Does this relate, go ahead, I'm sorry.
To clarify, so the public affairs unit, which I love that, I love where that's grown. So that's you and 2 officers?
2 officers right now, but
Like civilian
the
or-
civilian, we are in the process of hiring a civilian, and that person hasn't been decided who that will be yet. But once that person comes in, there'll be about a 6-week training period, and then one of the officers will rotate back to patrol.
Okay.
And so we'll have 1 officer, 1 civilian, and our hopes with that is that the civilian will bring some longevity in the unit. Right now, the officers rotate out on every 3 years, and so we have a new officer coming in, and we have to train them up, and so we kind of lose some time with that, with being able to do some of the things that we do. And so we're hoping that this person will provide some stability in the unit and kind of help us kind of move on to the next level.
I can kind of assume the reason why you'd want the civilian to go with an officer, but I just wanted to kind of ask.
So so as officers, sometimes we speak a certain language, and I'll say something that he might understand. You would probably understand, but you might be, what's 10-4? or, I'm en route, all of this lingo. And it's hard to get out of that cop talk when we're giving presentations in the community. And so my hopes is that with a civilian, they can help do a better job of explaining the message that we're trying to get out there and put it into terms that the public and the community will relate to. It's really important, and as much as we try, and I think what the piece that I'm writing is so good and everybody's gonna understand it, the fact is it's not. I'm not a professional writer, and so if I can have somebody that doesn't have the police background and comes from a different world, and they can help relate better to the public, then we're doing something right, and that's what our hope is with hiring the civilian.
There's, the title of this is the Community Police Review Board. And if there are no complaints, there's not much, we can effectively be an existing body and wait around for some complaint to eventually happen. But the other piece that talks about us making suggestions and stuff, I would suggest that that's probably the most important thing that we have to do. So please don't take any of this as criticism, because we're all new to this as well. But but when we get onto these things, there's just loads and loads of questions, especially when we would like to be giving something that was positive, to the police force to help them help us. I would suggest that we add a review of this report and discussion of how this might relate to our role in recommendations for outreach and training. Add this to the April meeting as an agenda item, because I think there's a lot of meat in here that we might be able to.
I think to the point of being we want to be proactive. Let's get with it. If we're sitting
Right.
here mulling over little things, let's get proactive in this issue back. And do that.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think this is great. It's lovely to see this kind of engagement. Engagement is, I believe, what it is. I think, just a couple things real quickly. I think we could have some rich conversation here with folks to talk about, what does bias mean? What does all of that mean? And talk about not only just about the diversity in terms of the different populations that reside here in our lovely community, but also talk about the issues of bias could include also poverty, issues of poverty, and all these things that we know and understand. And but I'm thinking about how best in terms of prevention, because I hope we never have a complaint. Isn't that kind of our goal?
Yep.
And so what is it that we can do proactively, I'm thinking, to assist in any way we can? And I'm thinking about, your comment was really good about saying, we don't know what we don't know. And that's just pure and honest and good. What that might mean is, like, what are we doing in our own force in terms of our hiring to make sure that our force truly reflects our population and our demographic in ways that we can engage even more and be able to have that kind of approach. And then how best are we using all the advisory kind of groups that come on board to the city and other kinds of populations like that. I have to just say, as a member of the Haskell Indian Nations University community, our relationship with law enforcement is bar none one of the best I've ever seen, and one we feel so good about. Our students come from all over the country. They come from, our diversity is our tribal diversity. We've got almost up to 200 different tribes coming in to our community, and we all have different ways in which we see the world and are in the world. Certainly we have to address those every day at Haskell. The fact that our Captain Squire is front and center with us all the time in ways that are not criminalizing and are not ways in which are offensive, truly is phenomenal. We're lucky. And so I see us a lot here, but what I don't see is maybe some intentional engagement with other communities, just as you said. So how is it that we engage and reach out to these other diverse populations and smaller groups in the community? The other good thing that I think I love too is publicly seeing that you're engaged in some of these groups makes me feel good as a citizen. And so that is an important message to every citizen. If you're involved in anything that's LGBTQIA or anything with the universities or any group in town, it's like, okay, I'm included here. So any indicator of engagement that really emphasizes that kind of inclusivity within the community, I think, can be really important and valuable. So, and send them an indirect or message.
Any other questions?
Do you have
Well-
one question, sorry?
Yes, ma'am.
Are, like, there's a lot of volunteerism, is there like a mandatory volunteer, like, do you guys have mandatory, like, I was in the military and it's like, you volunteer because you have to, so, okay, cool.
No, that's,
I was just like, this is really
They have a
impressive,
community-
so like, are they doing this on their own, or is this like,
They
they
have a community service
volunteer?
project in the academy that technically would be considered mandatory. But
Yeah, okay, just, yeah.
other than that, that is all everybody on their
Alright,
own
cool.
time.
Well, anyhow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of things that you mentioned, Tanya, are things that we could adjust during the.
We appreciate the praise about Haskell and stuff, but we also want the criticism about what we're missing. I
Yeah.
can't reiterate that enough. Like I said, we know, and so
Yeah.
we also have to give you a meeting
Important.
time.
Yeah.
Being the meanie on the group, you know, I'm going to try to bring it back relative to police and, you know, anti-racial profiling and things. We can't be everything and everything in terms of outreach for every community and things, but everything that you say impacts people.
Because a couple of things too you even touched on is one is reaching out to people that traditionally wouldn't want to reach out to us anyways, and it's also advantageous for recruiting because that is a very difficult thing these days.
Well, related to this, and again, I would like to add this to a longer presentation to this, to the agenda for next meeting, which is the study that we were alluding to, the one that is going to replace the flawed study, and it would really be useful to find out, because a lot of the things that we were just talking about in terms of outreach and how do you include people, et cetera, and you know, the other part of it is when you have to look in the rearview mirror every once in a while and you have to ask things about, okay, traffic stops and all those kind of things. What is the interaction with disadvantaged groups, et cetera? So I think it wouldn't need to be long, but I mean,
Again, that would be something that we could ask the staff person with that agency if they would be willing to come and kind of brief you
Right.
at least on the study and the status and some of the
or
details as they
even-
know.
Or just, you know, just the aims of it and a broad general thing. There being no complaint or review that is at hand, I see no reason to have a January 31st meeting. Does anybody else? So can we just have a quick, agreed, we can cancel that. We do need to talk a little bit, very shortly, about, I'm coming up with a conflict for the next two meetings, and even though we have a deputy chair, I don't necessarily want to have to rely on that. Is there anybody else who has a conflict with April 11th and July 11th, which are the next two principal meetings? And if you don't have, you know, would you please get a hold of me and let me know, because I would like to, if it's possible with everybody, and I'll send an email out asking this, but if April the 10th could possibly be our meeting instead of the 11th, and that we don't even know we have a venue on it yet, but, and again, if you foresee that you will not be able to, please be proactive and send an email copy to everybody and to Bobby to tell her that you may or may not make a certain meeting. That way we can manage the quorum ahead of time to see if we got, an issue coming up. Are there any other items of business or suggestions for the agenda for next time? Right now, we have the usual reading of minutes and stuff. We may or may not have a response from the city commission on our thing, and then we'll talk about the police report, and I would like to pretty much try to, other than just having a presentation, if it's possible, on the study coming up, I'd like to try to devote most of the time that we're at the meeting to the police report and have a whiteboard kind of a meeting on ideas and things that we could pursue or discuss relative to making positive suggestions for the outreach and education piece of it.
Sounds good. I was gonna ask real quick, do you all have a date for the Citizens Academy?
We have not scheduled it out yet, but as soon as I do, I will let Sergeant Ernst know.
But it'll be in 19, it's gonna be this year.
I'm sorry, what's that?
It'll be in this year.
It will be in this year, oh
Okay.
yeah. I would
Do you mind
imagine
if I
sometime in
briefly
summer.
broach that topic, if they're going to table it?
Since
Or
you
at
already
least get some
been
direction
through it,
from the
you're
board
gonna be
meeting.
the last.
I was just gonna do that.
I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
updates on some things.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to talk about July 11th. Are you in here, or is that when you travel to Sanjay?
He's meeting.
Oh, okay, sure. I'm probably gone.
Okay,
July 11th.
could you send it,
Yeah,
rather
I will
than
do
do
that.
this and I
Yeah,
won't write it down, send,
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was gonna ask them if, as we start discussing on some of the or some of the suggestions for outreach we wanna make, how would it help best
As far as how to provide the information?
from our side to you?
Suggestions,
guys.
yeah.
well,
Do we want to do it through you?
we want to do it as a board.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all,
Absolutely.
my suggestion is, or my concept that's floating unspoken in my head is that the next meeting, we're going to sit and brainstorm a lot of this. And my goal would be some topics, some specific topics that we could go back to Sergeant Rhodes, Sergeant Ernst, and say, here's some ideas or questions or whatever it is. Would you have an opportunity on the July meeting to come back and say, what do you think of some of these suggestions? But I would like to really, I'd really like to get something down and specific to the police, the city, commission, maybe both, and then see if we can get some responses back in July. Because that will effectively be the end of our year in office, the first year.
One quick thing on that, and if I'm wrong in this statement, I need to be corrected, but I get you as a board will formally say, these are some things we recommend, but if somebody wants to talk about something privately, they don't want to discuss with the board, but, hey, have you thought about doing this or that? We're open to that, so, and you have my contact information.
I don't think we have any bashful people.
I'm just making sure, because I would hate to have somebody not, we'll take the information any way we can get.
Well,
I will
you and
give
I
you,
had this discussion started.
I will give you each my card,
Please.
and if there are specific things that you know are coming up between now and April, you can give me a call. And then I will plan on being at the April meeting, so that if you have any questions or I can assist you in any way, I can help you out with that.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to note that on the April 11th meeting, you'll see on your meeting schedule there, We did pencil in this, receive a briefing about some hypothetical investigation steps. There was some
Yeah, I
discussion on the
think-
board about that.
Yeah.
So did you want to have that on your April meeting as well, or do you want to have that at a different meeting?
Oh, I think
This is
that
the
that's,
agenda item I was gonna bring up, because it came up early in the minutes.
Mhm.
But it sounds like the April meeting is really full, and we don't really need to pile that on. This speaks to the other part of our job, which is about complaints, and if we ever had an appeal that we were gonna work with. So I would propose that we keep that, because I think it's really important.
yeah, I think so too.
But I think we ought to move it to July and get it out from under April, because April's got plenty on it, and April will be an interesting meeting. We don't need to make it impossible.
So move this briefing to the July meeting.
I would
Okay.
suggest that. This is about investigative
Yes.
procedures, and maybe with some redacted case material to help us understand how you go through your complaint.
Probably gonna come up with a hypothetical. With that being said, as we navigate towards that July meeting, I asked for some direction, if even like, how do they do this or this, any specific detail that I might be able to answer a question specifically. If you want to shoot me an email or whatever, in between now and July, I will include that in the presentation.
Okay.
If that's, you know.
Do a quick presentation so we get some idea.
Do this as a presentation? I don't think there's time to do it.
Why not?
Because it's loaded.
1 hour.
It's already loaded.
And
Well,
Mr. Chair,
Our typical 1 hour meetings last 2
No, no,
hours.
I said we should
Diane.
do an hour for a brainstorm.
Oh,
Diane, I was gonna ask, if we wanna have more than one meeting a quarter, we can do that.
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely.
You can
That's
set-
why we
you can
came up
set
with
your meeting.
December.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, we might wanna consider that, because once we hit the summer, it's gonna get really, people are
People
gonna
are
be
all
gone.
over, yes.
And so we've got a lot going on that we can't get in to the time frame here.
As a general response to that, who's available in March? As a broad generality, we can do just like Dr. Gibson pushed us into positively, the study issue really had to have an answer, so we had a December meeting. How about a March meeting? In which case, if that's the case, we could take a look at that overcrowded April and maybe split between the two of them.
we'll go to May. I'm not here for 2 weeks in March.
Okay,
But
well,
there's still 2 other weeks in March.
I'd say I don't know everybody's schedule, so, could you simply take a look at your schedule and, give a broad, I'm available at this period of time in March to Ms. Worthall, and then we'll see if we can, would that work?
Yes, if I could make a suggestion, if you have a particular month that you'd like us to look at, why don't we look at the availability of rooms? We could put a couple of evening meeting suggestions during that particular month out to the board for kind of a poll, if that's the way you want to do it. And if you will, if you still have a meeting in April, and if we're talking about May, then that's something that we can make sure to confirm with
Well, that
everybody,
would
so
be
we've got a
useful,
date.
And the other piece of it is, since I've got some family and other travel obligations in April, it might be something if they could look at March and May. Maybe we might be able to do March and May, then July, instead of March, April.
Okay.
One minor hiccup with the May is the report is due there's a report that needs to be presented to you in May, it would not be done. While the time for me to complete the report does not take any time at all, but merely we still need more time. We need to get closer to July 1.
And there are.
When you make your presentation is July, right?
Right, and that a meeting really needs to be held in July for that exact reason, and also preparing an annual report to the commission. You can see that I've already kind of slotted those in, because those things are due, I think, by August the 1st.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about the July,
Right.
that's sort of sacrosanct.
Right, okay.
But I was thinking it may be with the good stuff that we've brought up in the last meeting or two, maybe a March and May combination instead of just April.
Okay.
Because quite frankly, I'd like to participate.
Okay, so let me just make sure that I understand so that we can relay this. There is a desire to have, in lieu of an April meeting, looking at the possibility of a March and a May meeting instead. And we will put out a poll to the board about potential March dates and potential May dates. And if we schedule a March meeting and a May meeting, you're canceling your April one.
Yeah, I'm looking at how do I get around the April
Okay.
thing.
Can you do end of April or that doesn't work?
No, it doesn't, unfortunately. Anyhow, the whole point is, let's just poll everybody and see what's there. I'm not saying, I'll keep working at my thing and see if I can come up with something in April as well. Everybody has other lives and obligations, but I would like to see what options we might have in March and May in addition to April.
I just wanted to add,
No, it is.
I just wanted to remind that the Kansas Open Meetings Act prohibits you from communicating outside of the board meetings on issues related to the board. The only thing you would be permitted to do is to come up with a mutually acceptable time for the next meeting, but not any other business. So I think it's a good idea to just have staff come up with a poll. So if you could refrain from emailing each other, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank
I'll have
you.
anything to do with anything.
I don't have any.
No,
Today,
no.
actually,
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's also unanimous. Thank you. I think we did well today.